The Aston Martin AMR23 is perhaps the car that's got most tongues wagging in the opening days of testing of the 2023 Formula One season here in Bahrain. One of the reasons this car has got so much attention is not least its fast lap times on the opening day of the test, but also its side pod design. Just here, very clear to see. And Bob, now try and have a look over the side of that. It's almost a complete cliff down there as you look down the side of the car. It's this same shape that you've seen on a lot of different cars, but side pods alone do not make for a quick racing car. You have to do a complete package, and that's what Aston Martin have done. They've introduced a fairly, well, it's not really an evolution of last year's car, it's a pretty different concept altogether. Yes, they've retained push rod front suspension and pull rod rear suspension, and they've still got a Mercedes power unit in the rear of the car. The interesting points of the car, though, is that the nose is much flatter and still quite wide, very similar to the design that we've seen on a number of other cars up and down the pit lane. But that, again, alone doesn't make a car a race winner. So what is it? Is it the fact that this is no more nor just a mere green bull, as some people dubbed the latter part of the season for the Aston Martin of 2022? No, this is something that's a very different concept indeed. And you can see behind the driver's head, just behind Fernando Alonso's head, you've got the very raised shoulder style design that you see on the Mercedes W14, though it's nowhere near as dramatic as it is on the works car. Now that is in part to house the plenums of the V6 Mercedes power unit, but not entirely. The shape of it is designed for aerodynamic gain. But for me, it's the shape of those side pods as they scoop round and cut down so deeply. That's not come from Red Bull, as many people are pointing to. For me, it's a bit of a mashup between the Red Bull concept, but more influenced, in fact, by the Ferrari concept of the F175. Those very high sides, that very dished section underneath. But Aston Martin have taken it to a far more extreme degree. And that's something I think that we're going to see a lot of teams taking a big look at. The problem for them is that you're not able to copy that so easily. And then moving down, looking around the front of the car, Aston Martin introduced a little technical feature. You can come around this side and see it underneath at the T-tray of the floor, just underneath the bottom of the car there. Where the leading edge of the floor is, there's a little winglet section just above it. That's something that Aston Martin introduced to Formula One at the start of the 2022 season. Ferrari took note of that and copied it. Everybody else took note when Ferrari fitted one to their car, and now about half the grid has these little T-tray winglets fitted to their cars. Looking along the floor of the car, it does seem fairly straightforward at the first glance, but that leading edge has a small wire section running just along the edge. That's something Mercedes introduced partway through the season, so Aston Martin looking across at their power unit suppliers' designs as well. So overall, the Aston Martin is not just a simple copy of another team's car. It's a whole mashup of other ideas and the team's own ideas. Though one big point of curiosity for me are the wing mirrors. By regulation, every 2023 car has to have bigger wing mirrors. And Aston Martin experimented with these extensively at the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2022. They had a really quite advanced version of these larger wing mirrors, but for the AMR23, they've opted not to use the advanced design and have gone for a slightly more simplistic design. That's an interesting direction for Aston Martin. Obviously, they tried what they saw in the wind tunnel, decided not to go with what they thought they were going to go with after all. So overall, the Aston Martin does seem like quite a tidy package, but there is one major point of concern for the Aston Martin team, and that's the reliability of the car. On the opening day of testing, an electrical problem interfered with the car's running, and then moving on through the day, it's not been an entirely smooth running for the green team. But if Aston Martin can keep their reliability together and that aerodynamic package works as well as we think it might, Aston Martin could be real contenders in the 2023 season.